Before you keep going, take a second and really sit with this question. What if the love you've spent so long hoping for isn't out there wandering around, still searching? What if the person you've been waiting on has already found exactly who they were looking for, and that person is you? Let that idea settle for a moment. Somewhere out there, someone may have spent years chasing a feeling they could never quite name. They met people along the way who looked perfect from the outside, who said all the right things at all the right times, who seemed to check every box of what an ideal partner should be. And yet, no matter how promising any of those connections appeared on paper, something underneath still felt unfinished, still felt hollow in a way they couldn't explain. Then, almost out of nowhere, they ran into someone whose presence brought calm instead of chaos, steadiness instead of second-guessing, peace instead of the emotional exhaustion they'd grown used to. And without fully clocking it in the moment, they had finally stumbled onto exactly what their heart had been searching for the whole time. Here's the interesting part. Real love doesn't always announce itself the second it shows up. Sometimes the most important connection of your life slips in so quietly that you don't understand its weight until much later. But once that understanding does wake up, everything starts to shift. Their mind keeps drifting back to the same person, again and again. Their priorities start rearranging themselves without much effort. Their heart begins opening in ways it never has before. The connection they once weren't sure about becomes the one thing they can't stop thinking about. So if you've ever wondered whether your own growth, your patience, your quiet way of holding steady through hard things actually matters to anyone, stay with me. By the end of this, you'll understand why the right person for you didn't just find someone they liked. They found the one person they never want to walk away from. Picture meeting someone who seems almost flawless right from the start. They always seem to know exactly what to say. They carry themselves with total confidence, and they only ever show you the parts of themselves they're sure you'll admire. This is how so many relationships begin. Most of us put forward a polished, curated version of ourselves at first, hoping we'll be accepted before anyone gets a look at who we really are underneath. But beneath every carefully chosen word and every rehearsed smile, there's a deeper person, someone carrying old wounds, private hopes, hidden insecurities, dreams they've never said out loud. Lasting love was never built on the version of ourselves we construct for other people. It actually starts the moment that construction is no longer necessary. The real turning point in any meaningful relationship happens the instant someone sees the actual you, your strengths and your flaws, your confidence and the vulnerability underneath it, and instead of pulling away, they lean in closer. That's the exact moment attraction stops being surface level and starts becoming something with real depth to it. So many people spend years believing they have to become a different, better, more impressive version of themselves before they're allowed to be loved. They convince themselves that if they can just be flawless enough, acceptance is guaranteed. They hide how sensitive they really are because they're scared it'll come across as weakness. They swallow their own opinions because they're afraid of being rejected for having them. They bury painful memories because somewhere along the way they decided those experiences made them less deserving of love. But every one of those hidden truths quietly puts distance between two people. Even when two people are standing right next to each other, invisible walls stay up as long as they're connecting through carefully built images instead of who they actually are. No relationship can reach its full depth while both people are still busy guarding their masks instead of opening up their hearts. Here's the beautiful part, though. Real connection often shows up right when we stop trying so hard to manage how other people see us. The moment you stop feeling like you need to impress someone, compete with anyone, or constantly prove your worth, your entire energy shifts. Conversations start feeling more real because honesty takes the place of performance. Laughter comes easier because it's genuine instead of forced. Even silence starts to feel comfortable because there's no longer this pressure to fill every quiet moment just to feel validated. That kind of quiet, unforced authenticity carries a kind of strength nobody can fake or copy. People can feel it when they're around someone who genuinely has nothing to hide. The person who's meant for you isn't out there hunting for a perfect image. They're looking for someone whose honesty gives them the courage to be honest too. Your authenticity, without you even trying, invites them to start setting down the emotional armor they've been carrying for years. The fears they never voiced, the disappointments they never shared, the dreams they kept locked away, because being around you makes pretending pointless. In that kind of space, trust slowly takes the place of uncertainty, and closeness builds naturally without force or pressure. That's exactly why real love tends to feel calm rather than chaotic. It doesn't run on constant effort to earn approval or non-stop performances designed to keep someone interested. Instead, it grows because both people gradually realize they don't need to protect themselves from being fully known anymore. They understand they can show their flaws without expecting to be abandoned for them. They can admit where they're weak without bracing for judgment. Rather than spending their whole lives trying to become worthy of love, they discover they've already been accepted exactly as they are, including the parts they once thought had to stay hidden. That realization doesn't just change the relationship. It changes how they see themselves entirely. Deep inside every person are quiet longings that rarely get said out loud. One of the biggest is simply wanting to be understood without having to explain every single feeling in detail. Plenty of people carry silent hopes that never come up in everyday conversation. Some are quietly aching for loyalty after being burned before. Others are dreaming of peace after years of emotional turbulence. These desires usually hide behind confident smiles, packed schedules, and carefully managed emotions. Someone can look completely fine on the outside, while privately hoping that one day someone will finally understand the unspoken language of their heart. And when that hope finally gets answered, something quietly transforms in them. Their emotional walls start coming down, piece by piece. Fear loses its grip. Love stops feeling like something they have to constantly fight to hold on to, and starts feeling like a place they can finally exhale in and call home. A lot of people mix up emotional fulfillment with excitement. They assume intense chemistry, nonstop attention, or dramatic emotional highs are what real love is supposed to feel like. Those things can be thrilling in the moment, sure, but they rarely last because they're built on shifting feelings instead of steady understanding. Real emotional fulfillment is something much quieter than that. It's the relief of no longer having to compete for someone's attention or constantly wonder where you stand with them. It's the security of knowing you're respected, valued, and accepted exactly as you are. That kind of connection goes far beyond physical attraction, because it meets emotional needs that may have gone unmet for years without anyone even realizing it. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly wonder whether someone actually cares. Doubt eats away at you. Fear quietly builds distance. Uncertainty makes even simple interactions feel fragile. But when someone responds again and again with patience, honesty, kindness, and real attention, those fears start to fade on their own. The heart stops burning energy bracing for rejection or disappointment. Slowly, it starts learning how to trust again. And that trust becomes the foundation lasting affection is actually built on. Love grows best in places where fear no longer runs the show. This kind of shift almost never happens overnight. A heart that spent years guarding itself doesn't suddenly become fearless because of one good conversation or one beautiful moment. Real healing comes from repeated experiences of feeling safe. Every promise that gets kept, every honest conversation, every act of genuine understanding sends the same quiet message. You're safe here. Over time, those repeated moments start replacing the old beliefs formed by past rejection, abandonment, or heartbreak. Bit by bit, what once felt impossible starts to feel completely natural. The person who used to brace for disappointment starts believing in kindness again. And as that emotional safety deepens, people naturally begin revealing the parts of themselves they used to keep hidden. They talk openly about their dreams. They admit their fears without feeling embarrassed. They share memories they once assumed no one would understand. They stop living in a constant state of self-protection because they found someone who listens without judging and stays present even when things get vulnerable. That's what creates a bond that's genuinely hard to break, because it's built on real understanding instead of temporary excitement or surface-level attraction. When someone finally experiences the kind of emotional connection they've been searching for, love stops being about proving their worth and starts becoming about building an actual shared life together. Their appreciation becomes more sincere, their attention becomes more intentional, their commitment grows stronger because the relationship is offering them something rare and genuinely meaningful. They're no longer chasing some unrealistic fantasy or endlessly searching for a missing piece. They realize what they actually wanted all along was never perfection. It was a connection where their heart could finally rest, their mind could quiet down, and their real self could exist without fear of judgment. A lot of people assume attraction starts with looks, achievements, or the ability to charm a room. Those things might grab someone's attention briefly, but they rarely build the kind of connection that actually lasts. The strongest kind of attraction comes from inner transformation. It starts the moment someone stops letting fear run their life and starts living in line with the truth of who they are. This kind of quiet shift isn't always obvious to look at, but the people around them can feel it without needing an explanation. They carry themselves differently. Their presence feels more peaceful. Their confidence reads as genuine instead of performed. Their choices reflect an emotional maturity that simply can't be faked. Real transformation usually comes out of life's hardest moments. Heartbreak, rejection, loneliness, disappointment. These things can either turn someone bitter or make them wiser, depending on what they choose to do with the pain. The people who choose growth over resentment start asking themselves deeper questions. Instead of blaming every painful experience on the world around them, they go looking for the lesson buried inside it. Slowly, they let go of habits that used to hold them back. They stop chasing constant approval from other people. They stop measuring their own worth by how much attention they're getting. Instead of trying to prove themselves over and over, they put their energy into becoming the most honest, most authentic version of who they already are. As that inner growth continues, a different kind of confidence starts to form, not loud, not demanding, not desperate for validation or competing for admiration. It's a calm, steady confidence rooted in genuinely accepting yourself. Someone who truly knows their own worth doesn't need to convince anyone else of it, because their quiet certainty speaks louder than any words could. They speak honestly because they're no longer afraid of being misunderstood. They set healthy boundaries because they respect themselves enough to need them. They're willing to walk away from situations that disrupt their peace, because they understand that protecting their emotional well-being isn't selfish. It's necessary. That quiet confidence ends up being deeply attractive precisely because it's built on stability rather than insecurity. It doesn't demand constant reassurance or attention. It simply reflects someone who has learned to stand firmly in their own worth, and that kind of steadiness naturally pulls people closer. Emotional maturity is another trait that strengthens meaningful relationships. Instead of reacting on impulse, emotionally mature people choose thoughtful responses shaped by patience and understanding. They listen before jumping to conclusions. They communicate instead of assuming the worst. They understand that everyone is carrying some invisible struggle, and that awareness lets them respond with more compassion. Rather than trying to control the people they love or leaning on constant reassurance to feel secure themselves, they offer affection freely without letting fear, jealousy, or possessiveness dictate the relationship. There's something deeply reassuring about being around someone who's taken the time to actually understand themselves. Their inner peace has a way of rubbing off on the people around them. Conversations feel more genuine because they're rooted in honesty instead of pretense. Disagreements become chances to grow instead of battles to win. Their calm presence gives other people permission to lower their own defenses, because authenticity has a way of drawing out more authenticity in return. People often feel safe around them without fully understanding why. That's exactly why lasting attraction can never be built on looks alone. Physical beauty fades. Success comes and goes. Circumstances shift constantly, but the qualities built through real inner growth only get stronger with time. Someone who has turned their pain into resilience, their reflection into wisdom, and their hardship into compassion carries something far more valuable than any temporary charm. Their character speaks before they even open their mouth. Their actions naturally build trust, and their quiet strength leaves a lasting impression on everyone who gets to know them. In the end, it's this kind of inner transformation that makes a person truly unforgettable. Real love isn't drawn only to appearances. It's drawn to emotional depth, inner peace, sincerity, and authenticity. The qualities that keep growing long after first impressions have faded, building a connection that gets stronger over time instead of weaker. Deep down, every human being carries one simple but powerful need: to be accepted exactly as they are. Underneath the confidence, the achievements, the carefully maintained image, there's a quiet hope that someone will see both the strengths and the flaws and still choose to stay. That longing isn't a weakness. It's one of the most basic needs of the human heart. Excitement and chemistry might spark a relationship into existence, but they're rarely enough to sustain it long term. What actually makes love last is emotional safety. The comforting knowledge that someone truly sees you, understands your flaws, and chooses to stay anyway. When someone finally experiences that kind of connection, something inside them genuinely shifts. Instead of constantly hunting for reasons to leave, they start finding countless reasons to stay. Their energy moves from self-protection toward genuine openness, because they no longer feel the need to guard every vulnerable part of themselves. The relationship becomes a place of peace instead of a source of uncertainty. So many relationships struggle because people confuse emotional unpredictability with passion. They mistake constant highs and lows for proof of deep love. In reality, that kind of instability usually creates anxiety, not intimacy. Someone might get attached to the intensity of it all, but attachment born out of uncertainty is a completely different thing from love built on trust. Eventually, the heart gets tired of constantly questioning where it stands. It gets worn down from analyzing mixed signals, doubting intentions, and bracing for disappointment. Even the strongest feelings start to fade when they're constantly surrounded by confusion and fear. Emotional safety offers a completely different experience. It lets the mind actually relax, because it doesn't have to stay on high alert anymore. Instead of wondering if someone's affection is real, trust builds through consistent action. Kindness stops being occasional and becomes something you can count on. Respect isn't something that has to be earned through perfection, it's simply given. Honest conversations replace guesswork, and patience replaces unnecessary conflict. Through those repeated experiences, the heart slowly realizes it doesn't need to hide behind walls anymore. Feeling truly understood is one of the greatest gifts another person can give you. It doesn't require agreeing on everything or sharing every interest. It comes from being with someone who actually listens before responding, who tries to understand instead of criticize, and who values your perspective even when it's different from their own. Being heard without judgment builds a sense of belonging that no grand romantic gesture could ever replace. Often, one sincere moment of real understanding carries more weight than 100 beautiful words said without any real presence behind them. Acceptance matters just as much in building a lasting bond. Everyone carries regrets, imperfections they struggle with, and memories they wish they could erase. Many people spend years hiding those pieces of themselves, convinced that revealing them will only lead to rejection. But genuine love actually begins the moment those hidden pieces are met, not with judgment, but with compassion, understanding, and the quiet reminder that nobody has to be perfect to be deeply loved. When someone finally meets a person who accepts their humanity instead of expecting perfection, those hidden fears start to fade. They stop feeling like they need to wear a mask or constantly prove their worth. Instead, they discover the freedom of being fully seen, fully understood, and still genuinely valued. As that emotional security keeps growing, love naturally gets stronger because it's no longer running on excitement alone. It's built on trust, consistency, compassion, and mutual respect. Both people start facing life's uncertainties together instead of carrying every burden alone. They support each other's growth instead of fearing change. They choose honesty even when the conversation is uncomfortable because they understand that truth strengthens a relationship far more than the temporary comfort of staying silent. In this kind of relationship, love doesn't rely on dramatic gestures or constant proof. It quietly shows up in everyday moments, mutual understanding, dependable support, and the peaceful certainty that both people have finally found somewhere they truly belong. Real love tends to be far less dramatic than people expect, but it's also far more lasting because it's woven into the ordinary, unremarkable moments that slowly build into something extraordinary. Words carry a lot of power. They can comfort, inspire, encourage, and express something beautiful. But words alone were never enough to sustain lasting love. Anyone can make promises in an emotional moment. Anyone can talk passionately about the future or express affection when things are going well. Genuine love shows itself differently, through consistent action repeated day after day. Someone who truly cares doesn't rely only on heartfelt words to prove it. Their everyday choices become the clearest reflection of what's actually in their heart. Their reliability, their steady presence, the thoughtful little ways they show they're paying attention, that often says far more than words ever could. A lot of people get confused because they give more weight to emotional declarations than to consistent behavior. They remember the sweet messages, the romantic compliments, the beautiful conversations, while overlooking whether the actions actually followed through. Someone can promise lifelong commitment over and over while being completely absent whenever real support is needed. Someone else might rarely give a grand romantic speech, but they show up during hard times, they keep their word, and they build a genuine sense of stability. As time goes on, actions quietly reveal truths that words often hide. Love isn't measured by what someone repeatedly promises. It's measured by what they actually do day after day. Consistency is one of the clearest signs of real affection. Emotions naturally rise and fall as life changes, but genuine care stays steady through both the good seasons and the hard ones. Someone who truly loves you doesn't disappear the moment life gets complicated or inconvenient. They keep making time for you. They keep checking in on you. They remember the small things that matter to you. They keep showing genuine interest even as their own responsibilities pile up. Those repeated actions send a powerful, unspoken message. You matter, and you're still a priority. That kind of consistency is what replaces uncertainty with trust, and it's what allows emotional security to actually take root. Presence is another quiet way real love shows itself. Just being physically nearby isn't enough, because someone can sit right beside you and still be emotionally checked out. True presence means giving someone your full attention without distraction, listening to understand rather than to judge, and offering support without turning the moment into something about yourself. When someone chooses to stay fully present through your happiest moments and your hardest ones alike, they build a connection that's genuinely difficult to break. Standing beside someone through life's challenges says more about the depth of their care than any extravagant gesture ever could. And patience matters just as much in any lasting relationship. Every meaningful connection goes through misunderstandings, personal struggles, and periods of growth. Someone who genuinely loves you doesn't expect you to be flawless or demand instant change. They understand, at their core, that growth takes time, and they're willing to give you that time without holding it against you.